Could my wife just fuck this sleazy dude like that? Hey everyone, I never thought I'd be writing here, but life has a way of smacking you in the face when you least expect it. My name's Chris, and I'm 35, married to Emily, who's 32. We've been together for 10 years, married for 8, and if you'd asked me a month ago, I would have said we had a solid marriage. Sure, we had our arguments, but nothing major. Or so I thought. Lately, though, Emily's been acting different. At first, it was small things like the sudden interest in fitness. Now, don't get me wrong, I was all for her getting a personal trainer and joining a gym. I even supported her when she spent a little extra on a fancy membership. I figured it was a healthy way for her to unwind after the stress of her demanding job. But soon, it felt less like a hobby and more like an obsession. She started staying late at the gym. Classes ran long, she'd say with a grin when she came home, sweaty and glowing. I didn't think much of it at first, until she started coming home too glowing, with her hair styled and makeup on. Makeup, after a workout. That's when my gut started whispering that something wasn't right. Then there was her phone. Emily had always been pretty open with her devices. We'd use each other's phones without a second thought. But suddenly, she started keeping it close, guarding it like it held state secrets. She even changed her passcode. When I casually asked about it, she laughed and said, "Oh, just in case the kids get into it. You know how sneaky they can be." The excuses didn't stop there. She began taking work calls during dinner or sneaking out to the backyard to talk. It's embarrassing to admit now, but I convinced myself she was stressed. I figured maybe she just needed space or time to herself. I even suggested we do date nights again to reconnect, and she said, "That's sweet, but I'm just so busy right now. Maybe later." The first real red flag, though, was the trainer himself, Travis. He's in his late 20s, tall, muscular, and oozing that confident charm that makes women swoon. I'd met him once briefly when I picked Emily up from the gym. He gave me one of those polite but dismissive handshakes, and then turned his full attention back to Emily. She giggled at something he said, and I remember feeling like a third wheel in my own marriage. Still, I ignored it. That was my first mistake, that I was starting to feel like the paranoid, insecure husband, until the day I saw Travis drop Emily off at home. It was 11:30 p.m. She was supposed to be out with her friend Megan, but there she was, stepping out of his sleek black car with a laugh I hadn't heard in months. And then he kissed her. Not a quick, friendly peck. Oral quiche y froze. My heart felt like it stopped mid-beat as I stared out the window. Emily didn't notice me watching. How could she? She was too busy smiling up at Travis like a lovesick teenager. After the kiss, she whispered something to him, laughed, and jogged up to the door, her gym bag bouncing on her shoulder. By the time she walked inside, I was already back on the couch, pretending to scroll through my phone. My mind was racing, my stomach in knots. She stepped into the living room, all casual, like she hadn't just been caught. "Hey," she said, dropping her bag by the door. "You're still up?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, couldn't sleep." "How was Megan?" For a split second, there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Guilt? Surprise? It was gone so quickly I almost thought I imagined it. "Oh, Megan's good," she said, kicking off her sneakers. "We just talked about her latest dating drama. You know how she is." She grabbed a water bottle from the kitchen and disappeared upstairs, humming to herself like she didn't have a care in the world. I sat there, gripping my phone, the reality of what I'd just witnessed sinking in. My wife kissed her trainer. My wife lied to my face. What else was she lying about? That night, I barely slept. I lay awake next to her, staring at the ceiling, my mind jumping from memory to memory. The late nights, the work calls, the sudden obsession with working out. It all fit together now, like a puzzle I didn't want to solve. The next morning, I decided I needed proof. Real proof. Something undeniable. So when I confronted her, she couldn't weasel her way out with excuses or half-truths. So I did what I never thought I'd do in a million years. I bought a hidden camera. Setting it up was easier than I expected. I installed it in the living room, disguised as a decorative clock we'd picked up on vacation a few years back. I told myself I wasn't doing this to spy. I was doing it to protect myself, to know the truth. Because deep down, I wasn't sure if I could trust my instincts anymore. And honestly, I hoped I was wrong. For a few days, nothing happened. Emily was her usual self. Sweet, bubbly, and just distracted enough to keep me suspicious. I scrolled through hours of footage every night, feeling a little crazier each time. What if I was imagining things? What if I was becoming one of those paranoid husbands who ruins his marriage over nothing? But on the fourth night, everything changed. The camera caught Emily and Travis, right there in my living room, and it wasn't just a kiss this time. The footage was burned into my brain the moment I saw it. I had started scrolling through the hidden camera feed as usual, convincing myself I wouldn't find anything again. And then there they were, Emily and Travis. It started innocently enough. She walked into the living room, her gym bag slung over her shoulder, and Travis followed right behind her. I recognized the timestamp immediately. This was last night. My stomach turned as I watched the scene unfold. They sat on the couch together, way too close for comfort. Emily laughed at something Travis said, resting her hand on his arm. It wasn't a friendly touch. No, it was deliberate, intimate. He leaned closer, his hand brushing a strand of hair from her face, and then she kissed him. Not like the kiss I saw from the window. This one was deeper, hungrier. She practically pulled him toward her like she couldn't get enough. I paused the video. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. There was no way I could unsee this. No way I could brush it off as some fleeting mistake. But the video wasn't over. When I hit play again, it got worse. Travis leaned back, pulling Emily onto his lap. They whispered things to each other I couldn't hear, thankfully. And then they started doing things on my couch. The couch where we had family movie nights, where our kids jumped around eating popcorn, where I used to sit with her thinking I was the luckiest man alive. I couldn't watch anymore. I slammed the laptop shut and sat there, my chest heaving. My heart felt like it had been yanked out of my chest and stomped on. How could she do this? In our home? I spent the next few hours in a haze, my thoughts bouncing between rage and disbelief. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, to scream at her and throw Travis out of my house. But I knew if I acted without thinking, I might lose control. I needed to approach this with a clear head, no matter how impossible that felt. Instead, I focused on gathering everything I needed. I made copies of the video and backed them up to multiple devices. I started combing through her phone records and bank statements. I was building my case one piece at a time. By the time Emily came home from the gym, the next evening, I was ready. When she walked through the door, she wasn't alone. Travis was with her. Again did I heard the front door creak open, followed by Emily's familiar laugh. My stomach dropped as Travis strolled in behind her like he owned the place, his cocky grin making my blood boil. They didn't even try to act like there was anything wrong with this picture. Him, casually walking into my home, with my wife, while I sat there waiting. I was sitting at the dining table pretending to scroll through my phone. I didn't bother to hide the glare I shot his way. Emily froze for a split second when she saw me, like she hadn't expected me to be home. But she recovered quickly. "Oh, hey, you're home early," she said, her voice a little too chipper. "I live here, Emily," I replied, my tone flat. I didn't even glance at Travis, who stood there looking as smug as ever. "Oh, right," she said, laughing nervously as she shuffled past me to the kitchen. "Travis just came by to go over some meal plans. For my fitness goals." Her words were like gasoline on the fire burning in my chest. I turned to face them fully, crossing my arms. "Meal plans?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Interesting. I didn't realize meal plans required sitting on someone's lap in our living room." Emily's face went pale. Travis, on the other hand, had the audacity to smirk. "Hey, man," he said, raising his hands in mock surrender. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. "Oh, there's no misunderstanding, Travis. I know exactly what's going on. I saw the video." Emily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "What video?" she stammered, her eyes wide with panic. "You know what video?" I said, my voice rising. "The one where you two decided to turn our living room into a sleazy motel." Travis finally stopped smirking. He looked at Emily, then back at me, trying to gauge how much I knew. "Look, man, it's not what you think," he started, but I cut him off with a glare that could have melted steel. "You don't get to talk," I snapped. "You've already said enough with your actions. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk out that door, and you're never coming back. If I see you anywhere near my house, my wife, or my kids again, I'll make sure you regret it. Travis hesitated, his bravado slipping. He opened his mouth to argue, but Emily stepped forward, her voice trembling. Chris, please just calm down. Let's talk about this. I turned to her, my voice shaking with barely contained rage. Talk about what, Emily? How you lied to me. How you brought him into our home. How you been sneaking around behind my back for months? Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't care. Not anymore. Chris, it's not like that, she pleaded. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. It was a mistake. A mistake? I scoffed. Emily, a mistake is forgetting to take out the trash. What you did was a choice. Over and over again, you chose to lie. You chose to betray me. And now, you're going to deal with the consequences. Just as I was about to throw Travis out, my phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from Megan, Emily's friend. Chris, we need to talk. It's about Emily. I stared at my phone, the message from Megan glaring back at me like a warning light. My hands tightened around it, my anger briefly replaced with confusion. Why was Megan texting me? And what could she possibly have to say about Emily? Emily noticed the change in my expression. Who's that? She asked, her voice shaky, but trying to sound casual. I didn't answer. Instead, I grabbed my phone and stepped into the hallway, putting as much space between myself and her and Travis as I could. With trembling fingers, I opened the message. Megan, Chris, I think you deserve to know. Emily hasn't been honest with you about a lot of things. Call me when you can. Great. Just great. Another layer to this nightmare. My gut told me Megan wasn't just referring to Travis. Whatever she wanted to tell me, it felt big, bigger than I was ready for. I took a deep breath and hit the call button. Megan answered almost immediately. Chris, she said, her voice low and urgent. I've been debating whether to tell you this, but after everything I found out, I couldn't keep quiet anymore. What are you talking about, Megan? I asked, pacing the hallway. Just spit it out. There was a pause, and I could hear her hesitating on the other end of the line. It's not just Travis, she said finally. Emily's been seeing other people too. He's not the first. The floor felt like it was collapsing beneath me. What? I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to believe it at first, Megan continued. But I overheard her talking to someone a few months ago at a party. She mentioned another guy, someone she was seeing before she started working out with Travis. She laughed about how easy it was to keep you in the dark. Megan's words hit me like a sledgehammer. I leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I demanded. I didn't know how, Megan admitted. I kept hoping she'd come clean, that she'd stop. But then I saw her with Travis last week, and I realized she's not going to stop, Chris. You need to know the truth. The truth. The truth was that the woman I married, the woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with, had been lying to me for longer than I realized. This wasn't just about Travis. This was a pattern. Thank you for telling me, I managed to say, my voice hoarse. I'll take it from here. As I hung up the phone, I felt a wave of cold fury wash over me. Emily wasn't just cheating. She was playing me. And now, I was done playing her game. I stormed back into the living room, where Emily and Travis were still standing. Travis looked uncomfortable now, like he was itching to leave, but didn't dare. Emily, on the other hand, was trying to act like she was in control of the situation. Who was that? She asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. I locked eyes with her, my rage barely contained. That was Megan, I said evenly. And she told me everything, not just about Travis. Everything. Emily's face turned white. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, her voice shaking. Oh, don't you? I snapped. Because according to Megan, Travis isn't the first guy you've been sneaking around with. So tell me, Emily, how long have you been lying to me? How many other men have there been? Her mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time, she looked genuinely panicked, like her carefully constructed web of lies was unraveling faster than she could keep up. I didn't mean, she began, but I cut her off. Save it, I said, my voice cold. You've been lying to me for months, maybe years. I gave you everything, Emily, and this is how you repay me. Travis took a step forward, raising his hands like he was about to say something, but I turned on him. Get out now. He hesitated, glancing at Emily, but one look at my face must have convinced him I wasn't bluffing. Without another word, he grabbed his keys and walked out the door, leaving Emily and me alone. The door slammed shut behind Travis. Emily broke down into sobs. But before she could speak, my phone buzzed again. It was Megan. The text read, "Chris, there's one more thing. You need to check your finances." Emily was sobbing in front of me, tears streaming down her face, but I couldn't focus on her. My phone was still in my hand, Megan's message burning into my brain. "Check your finances. Chris." Emily choked out, her voice trembling. "Please, just listen to me." "Stop." I snapped, holding up my hand. "I don't want to hear it right now." Her face crumpled, but I didn't care. Not after everything I just learned. I turned and headed upstairs, leaving her standing there, bewildered. I could hear her muttering something under her breath, but I tuned her out. I needed to focus. Once I was in the bedroom, I locked the door and grabbed my laptop. My hands were shaking as I logged into our joint bank account. At first, everything seemed normal. Balances where they should be, recent transactions matching what I expected. But Megan's warning stuck in my head. I decided to dig deeper. I opened the history of transfers and noticed something odd. A series of withdrawals from our savings account over the past few months. They weren't huge, just small enough to avoid catching my attention, but they added up. Thousands of dollars were missing, funneled into an account I didn't recognize. "What the hell?" I muttered, scrolling through the transactions. The name on the receiving account was unfamiliar, but I had a sinking suspicion that Emily knew exactly who it belonged to. My chest tightened as I imagined her using our money to fund her affair, paying for hotels, dinners, and God knows what else. But it wasn't just the withdrawals. I noticed something else, something that made my blood run cold. She had opened a credit card in my name without telling me. I stared at the screen, my head spinning. The credit card was maxed out. Thousands of dollars in charges I didn't recognize. Lavish purchases from high-end stores, expensive dinners, even bookings at luxury resorts. Emily had been living a double life, and I was footing the bill. I felt my grip on reality slipping as I tried to process everything. The lies, the cheating, the stolen money. How far had she gone? And for how long? My phone buzzed again, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was Megan. "Megan, Chris, I found out she's been using that money to spoil Travis. Gym equipment for him, clothes, even a trip to Vegas last month. I thought you should know." I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. Vegas. She told me she was at a work conference that weekend. I even stayed home with the kids, covering for her absence. I felt like a fool, a complete idiot for ever believing her lies. I stormed back downstairs, my laptop under my arm. Emily was sitting on the couch, her face buried in her hands. She looked up as I entered, her red-rimmed eyes full of panic. "What's wrong?" she asked, like she didn't already know. I slammed the laptop down on the coffee table and turned the screen toward her. "Care to explain this?" I said, pointing at the transactions. Her eyes widened, and she covered her mouth with her hand. "Chris, I can explain. Don't even try." I cut her off. "You've been stealing from me, from our family, all to bankroll your little fling with Travis. Or is there more? Because I just found a credit card I didn't know existed, maxed out with thousands of dollars in charges." "I didn't mean," she started, but I slammed my fist on the table, cutting her off. "Stop lying to me, Emily. Just stop. I want the truth. All of it. Now." She was silent for a moment, her lip trembling. Then, finally, she spoke. "I was going to pay it back," she whispered. "I swear, Chris, I didn't mean for it to get this out of hand. Travis said he needed help, and I didn't want him to think I wasn't good enough for him. You still here, dumbfounded. You stole from me because you didn't want to look bad in front of him? Emily, are you even listening to yourself? Do you hear how insane that sounds?" Her tears started again, but I didn't feel a shred of sympathy. This wasn't just a betrayal of trust. It was calculated, deliberate. And now I was stuck cleaning up her mess. I sat there, staring at the woman I thought I knew. Something occurred to me. If she was willing to steal from me for Travis, what else had she done? I grabbed my phone and started dialing a number. Emily's face twisted in confusion. "Who are you calling?" she asked, her voice shaky. I looked her dead in the eye. The bank. I'm freezing every account. Right now. Emily's face went pale the moment the word bank left my mouth. She shot up from the couch, her hands trembling. Chris, wait, please. You don't need to do this. Let me explain. I didn't even look at her as the call connected. A cheery customer service rep answered, but I cut right to the point. Hi. I need to freeze all activity on my accounts immediately. There's been unauthorized access. Emily panicked. Chris, stop. Please, let me handle it. I can fix this. She reached out, but I turned my back on her. Yes, I continued, ignoring her completely. Savings, checking, and any credit cards under my name. Lock everything down. As the rep confirmed my request and assured me they would begin an investigation, Emily broke down into a mess of sobs. You don't understand, she cried. If you freeze the accounts, I can't fix anything. I can't make it right. I hung up the phone and finally turned to face her. Fix what, Emily? You mean the thousands of dollars you stole from me? Or the trust you shattered? Or the fact that you've been cheating on me in every way possible? Her tears kept coming, but I didn't care. I was done feeling sorry for her. The silence that followed was suffocating. Emily stared at me, her chest heaving as she tried to catch her breath. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling. I messed up, Chris. I know I did, but I never meant to hurt you. I was just, I don't know, lost. Lost, I repeated, laughing bitterly. You weren't lost when you opened a secret credit card. You weren't lost when you drained our savings or lied about your trips. Emily, you didn't get lost. You made a choice. Over and over again, you chose this. She looked at me, her expression shifting from guilt to desperation. I can make it up to you, she pleaded. I'll sell everything I bought. I'll go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. Just don't throw it all away. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to cling to the hope that the woman I married was still in there somewhere, buried under the lies and betrayal. But the damage she had done wasn't something a few apologies or therapy sessions could fix. This isn't just about money, Emily, I said, my voice cold. It's about respect, about trust. You didn't just betray me. You betrayed everything we built together. Her face crumpled, and she sank back onto the couch, burying her head in her hands. I love you, Chris, she mumbled, her voice muffled. I shook my head. You don't get to say that. Not after everything you've done. I left her sitting there and walked out of the house, needing to clear my head. As I drove aimlessly around town, I tried to make sense of everything that had happened. Emily's cheating, the stolen money, Megan's warnings, it all felt like too much. When I stopped at a red light, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Megan. Megan, I heard from someone at the gym that Travis is seeing other women too. You're not the only one he's screwing over. I stared at the message, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. Of course, Travis wasn't just using Emily. He was probably conning every woman he trained. An idea started forming in my mind. If Travis thought he could walk away from this unscathed, he was dead wrong. I didn't just want to kick him out of my life. I wanted to make sure everyone knew exactly who he was. I texted Megan back, asking her for the gym's contact information. If Travis thought his charming smile and smooth talk would protect him, he was about to get the shock of his life. It was time to blow up his world the same way he'd blown up mine. Megan wasted no time getting back to me with the details. The gym where Travis worked, and apparently used as his personal hunting ground, was a trendy spot downtown. The kind of place where memberships cost more than a decent car payment and trainers like Travis were treated like fitness royalty. I sat in my car outside the gym, my mind racing. I didn't have a solid plan yet, but I knew one thing. Travis wasn't walking away from this unscathed. If he thought he could worm his way into my life, ruin my marriage, and keep his little empire intact, he was in for a rude awakening. Before I went in, I fired off another text to Megan. Me. Does anyone else know what Travis has been up to? Megan. A few women have their suspicions, but no one has hard proof. They're too scared to say anything. He's got this whole nice guy act down, but trust me, it's all fake. That was all I needed to hear. Travis's whole game depended on secrecy, on women like Emily being too ashamed or too scared to speak out. But if I could expose him, show the world who he really was, I could take away his power. I walked into the gym, the smell of sweat and protein powder hitting me like a wall. It was bustling with people, athletes grunting, treadmills humming, and trainers barking out encouragement. And there he was, standing near the free weights, grinning like he didn't have a care in the world. Travis hadn't noticed me yet, so I used the moment to scan the room. My eyes landed on a young woman in the corner, chatting with another trainer. She looked nervous, constantly glancing at Travis. I recognized that look. It was the same look Emily had when I first started noticing her lies. "Excuse me," I said, approaching her. "Do you train with Travis?" She looked startled, her eyes darting to him, and then back to me. Yeah, why?" "I think you should know something," I said, keeping my voice low. "Travis has been sleeping with his clients. A lot of them, including my wife." Her eyes widened, and she stepped back, looking like she wasn't sure whether to believe me. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the text Megan had sent me. "You're not the only one he's been sweet-talking," I said. "If you think you're special to him, trust me, you're not. He's using you." She stared at the screen, her face turning pale. I thought he was different," she whispered. "No, he's not," I said firmly. "But we can stop him. If you're willing to speak out, we can show everyone what he's really like. You don't have to do this alone." She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Okay," she said, her voice shaking. "I'll help. What do you need me to do?" We started talking to more women, quietly spreading the word about what Travis had been doing. Some were skeptical at first, but when I showed them the evidence, texts, screenshots, even footage from the hidden camera, they quickly changed their tune. By the end of the day, we had a small group of women ready to confront Travis and the gym's management. Just as we were wrapping up our plans, Travis spotted me. His confident smirk faltered, replaced by confusion and then anger. He started walking toward me, but before he could say a word, I raised my voice loud enough for everyone in the gym to hear. "Hey, Travis, care to explain why you've been sleeping with your clients and stealing their money?" The gym went silent. Every pair of eyes turned to him. The gym fell, so silent you could hear the clink of a dropped dumbbell in the corner. All eyes were on Travis as my words echoed through the room. His trademark smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of panic. "What the hell are you talking about, man?" he said, trying to sound calm. His voice had a slight tremor, though, and I wasn't about to let him off the hook. I took a step closer, my voice steady but loud enough for everyone to hear. "You've been sleeping with your clients, lying to them, and using them. You destroyed my marriage, and from what I hear, you've done it to plenty of other women too." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some people started whispering, others just stared at Travis, waiting for his response. "You're crazy," he said, laughing nervously as he ran a hand through his hair. "This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's probably just bitter because his wife." "Don't," I growled, cutting him off. "Don't you dare bring her into this. I have proof, Travis. Texts, video, bank records. Do you really want me to show everyone here what kind of man you are?" At that, several women in the room shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances. I wasn't the only one holding proof, and Travis seemed to realize that. One of the women I'd spoken to earlier, a young trainer named Lily, stepped forward. Her voice was shaky but determined. "He's lying," she said, pointing at Travis. "He told me the same things, that I was special, that he cared about me. But I found out he was saying the exact same thing to at least 2 other women." The crowd stirred again, whispers growing louder. Travis glared at Lily, his mask of confidence cracking. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "You're all just jealous or something. You don't have any real proof." "Oh, but we do," I said, pulling out my phone. With a few taps, I opened the hidden camera footage and held it up for the closest people to see. It didn't take long for the murmurs to turn into outright outrage. "Are you kidding me?" A man near the treadmills barked, his voice laced with disgust. "You're doing this here? At the gym? That's gross," another woman said, shaking her head. Travis took a step back, his eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. "This is a setup," he shouted, his voice cracking. "He's making this all up. None of this is true." But by now, his words carried no weight. Too many people had seen the footage, heard the stories, and pieced together the truth. The gym's manager, a no-nonsense woman named Karen, pushed her way through the crowd. "What the hell is going on here?" she demanded, looking from me to Travis. Your golden boy here has been using the gym to sleep with clients and steal from them, I said bluntly. I've got the evidence if you'd like to see it. Karen raised an eyebrow and turned to Travis. Is this true? Of course not, he blurted out, his voice high and defensive. This guy's just trying to ruin my reputation because he can't handle his wife leaving him. I let out a bitter laugh. Nice try, Travis, but I'm not the only one calling you out. I gestured toward Lily and the other women who had spoken to me earlier. These women have stories too. And if you want to take this to court, I've got plenty of evidence to back it up. Karen crossed her arms, her expression hardening. Travis, my office. Now! As Travis followed Karen toward the back office, the gym door swung open. I turned to see Emily standing there, her face pale, her eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on me. What's going on? She asked, her voice trembling. Before I could answer, someone in the crowd muttered, Isn't that the wife? The room's attention shifted to her, and the weight of everyone's stares made her shrink back. She had no idea she'd just walked into the middle of a storm she helped create. Emily froze in the doorway, her eyes darting between me, the murmuring crowd, and the office door Travis had just disappeared into. The weight of all those stares seemed to press down on her, and for a moment, I thought she might turn and bolt. But she didn't. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and stepped into the gym, trying to keep her composure. Chris, she said, her voice steady but laced with a nervous edge. What's going on? I folded my arms and gave her a look that could have cracked concrete. Why don't you tell me, Emily? I said, my voice cold enough to freeze fire. What are you doing here? She hesitated, glancing around at the crowd. I came to talk to Travis about my workout plan, she said, the lies so flimsy it practically crumbled in the air. Someone in the back snickered, and Emily flinched. She looked back at me, panic flickering in her eyes. Chris, can we talk privately? Please? Privately? I repeated, my tone dripping with sarcasm. You mean like how you and Travis had your little private moments in our house? Or maybe the ones you paid for with my money? The crowd gasped. Emily's face turned beet red, and she took a step closer, her voice dropping to a frantic whisper. Chris, stop. Please, not here. But I wasn't about to let her control the narrative. Not anymore. No, Emily, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. You don't get to play the victim now. Not after everything you've done. Not after stealing from me and lying to my face for months. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I wasn't moved. The anger and betrayal burning inside me wouldn't allow it. Just then, Karen, the gym manager, emerged from the back office, her expression a mix of fury and disgust. She strode up to us, ignoring Emily completely, and looked me straight in the eye. We're terminating Travis effective immediately, she said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. And we're investigating further to make sure this kind of behavior doesn't happen again. If you or anyone else here has more evidence, I'd appreciate it if you shared it with me. A small ripple of satisfaction ran through me, but it didn't ease the tightness in my chest. Oh, I've got plenty, I said. Karen nodded grimly and turned to the crowd. Everyone, show's over. Get back to your workouts. If you've got questions, come see me directly. The crowd started to disperse, though a few people lingered, clearly still fascinated by the drama unfolding. Karen turned to Emily, her gaze icy. And you, she said, her tone sharp, I suggest you leave. This isn't the place for you right now. Emily's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She looked at me, silently begging me for something, what I didn't know. Forgiveness? Understanding? I gave her nothing. Outside the gym, the air felt heavier than before. Emily followed me to my car, her voice trembling as she tried to speak. Chris, can we just talk about this? Please? I stopped in my tracks and turned to face her. Talk about what, Emily? How you lied to me. How you used our money for your little fling. Or maybe about how you came here today, knowing full well I'd already caught you. She flinched at my words but didn't back down. I messed up, okay? I know I did. But I still love you, Chris. Doesn't that mean anything? I laughed bitterly. Love? You don't get to use that word, Emily. Not after everything you've done. Her tears started again, and she reached for my arm, but I pulled away. I don't know who you are anymore, I said, my voice breaking despite my best efforts. And I'm not sure I want to. As I climbed into my car, ready to leave her standing there, my phone buzzed with another message from Megan. Megan, Chris, I just heard something else about Emily. Call me when you can. What now? I sat in my car for a moment, staring at Megan's message. Part of me didn't want to call her. I was already drowning in the mess of lies and betrayal Emily had created. Did I really want to hear more? But the nagging curiosity wouldn't let me ignore it. I glanced at Emily through the windshield. She was still standing there in the parking lot, arms crossed, her eyes fixed on the ground. I didn't care if she saw me make the call. She'd lost the right to any of my consideration. I dialed Megan's number, and she picked up on the first ring. Chris, she said, her voice tense. You need to hear this. Go on, I said, gripping the steering wheel. She took a deep breath. I was talking to one of my friends from work, and it turns out Emily's been doing more than just messing around with Travis. She's been planning to leave you. My chest tightened. What do you mean, planning to leave? She's been talking to a lawyer, Megan said. She's been trying to figure out how to take as much as she can in a divorce. Apparently, Travis has been coaching her on it, telling her to drain your accounts and set you up to look like the bad guy in court. The words hit me like a freight train. I had suspected she was using me. But this was calculated, ruthless. She was going to blindside you, Chris, Megan continued. If you hadn't found out about all this when you did, she might have already filed. And knowing her, she'd probably make up some story to make you look like the villain. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. All the pieces were coming together now. The secret credit card, the missing money, the lies. She hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. She'd been setting me up for months. Thanks for telling me, I said, my voice cold. I'll take care of it. Be careful, Chris, Megan warned. She's not going to go down without a fight. I ended the call and sat there, my mind racing. Emily wasn't just trying to save face. She was actively trying to destroy me. And now I knew for certain I couldn't trust a single word that came out of her mouth. I got out of the car and walked over to her, my steps heavy with purpose. She looked up at me, her tear-streaked face full of desperate hope. Chris, she started, but I cut her off. You've been planning to leave me, I said, my voice sharp and accusing. And don't even try to deny it. I know you've been talking to a lawyer. I know Travis has been helping you. Her eyes widened, and her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I wasn't going to go through with it, she stammered. I swear. I thought about it, but... Save it, I snapped. You weren't just thinking about it, Emily. You were planning it. You drained our savings. You racked up debt in my name. You lied to me over and over again. And for what? So you and Travis could ride off into the sunset while I was left to pick up the pieces? She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. I didn't know what else to do, she cried. I was scared, and Travis said, Don't you dare blame this on him, I said, my voice rising. This was your choice, Emily. Your betrayal. And now you're going to deal with the consequences. Emily collapsed onto the curb, her head in her hands, but I didn't feel any sympathy. I walked back to my car, started the engine, and pulled out of the lot. As I drove away, my phone buzzed again. It wasn't Megan this time. It was Karen, the gym manager. Chris, her text read, You might want to come back to the gym. Travis just tried to get into the office to delete some files, and we stopped him. We found something you'll want to see. I slammed on the brakes and pulled into a side street, staring at Karen's text. My mind spun with possibilities. What could Travis have been so desperate to delete? My gut told me whatever it was, it would blow this whole mess wide open. Without a second thought, I turned the car around and headed back to the gym. By the time I pulled into the parking lot, Karen was already outside, her arms crossed and her expression grim. I thought you'd come back, she said as I stepped out of the car. We've locked Travis out of everything, but he was trying to access his files on the office computer. Luckily, he didn't get far before we caught him. What did you find? I asked, cutting straight to the point. Karen hesitated, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. Come inside, she said. Inside the manager's office, Karen closed the door and gestured toward her computer. This is what he was trying to erase, she said, clicking on a folder labeled Clients. The screen filled with spreadsheets, emails, and scanned documents. At first glance, it looked like normal gym records, session schedules, payment details, but Karen clicked on a file that made my blood boil. It was a ledger listing dozens of women's names, including Emily's. Next to each name was a set of notes, dates, amounts of money spent, and disturbing comments about what Travis had gotten from each client. He was tracking his relationships like business transactions, Karen said, her voice filled with disgust. He's been preying on these women, manipulating them into giving him money, gifts, whatever he could get. I scanned the screen, my stomach churning. Emily's name was near the top of the list. Next to it were notes about the money she'd transferred, the gifts she'd bought him, and even details about their Vegas trip. But it didn't stop there. Another file contained emails between Travis and someone else, Emily's lawyer. My heart dropped as I skimmed the messages. In the emails, Travis and the lawyer discussed strategies for bleeding me dry in a divorce. They joked about how easy it was to manipulate Emily and even outlined plans for how she could claim financial abuse to sway the court in her favor. "This guy's a predator," Karen said, shaking her head. "And your wife?" "I'm sorry, Chris, but it looks like she was in on it." My vision blurred with anger. Emily hadn't just betrayed me. She'd teamed up with this scumbag to destroy my life. And now I had the proof in front of me. "I need copies of all of this," I said, my voice shaking with rage. Karen nodded. "Already done. I've got it all on a flash drive for you. And I've contacted the gym's legal team. We're pressing charges for fraud and misconduct. If you need anything else for your case, just let me know." I took the flash drive and stuffed it into my pocket, my mind racing. With this evidence, Emily and Travis didn't stand a chance. As I walked back to my car, I felt a strange mix of triumph and devastation. I finally had everything I needed to expose them for what they were. But it came at a cost. I had to confront the fact that the woman I loved had actively participated in this scheme. I started the engine and drove home, the flash drive burning a hole in my pocket. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw a car parked out front. It wasn't Emily's. It was her lawyer's. And he was standing on my porch, holding a stack of papers that I sat in my car for a moment, staring at the man standing on my porch. Emily's lawyer, tall, slick, and wearing the kind of suit that screamed arrogance. He looked like he belonged in a courtroom drama, not standing smugly on my front step with a stack of papers under his arm. My blood boiled as I stepped out of the car. I hadn't even closed the door when he spotted me, his expression shifting into a practiced smile. "Mr. Walker," he said smoothly as I approached. "We need to talk. What the hell are you doing at my house?" I snapped, stopping just short of the porch. He held up the papers like they were a peace offering. "I wanted to give you the courtesy of serving these in person." He extended the papers toward me, but I didn't take them. "Serving me?" I asked, my voice dripping with disbelief. He nodded, the fake sympathy in his eyes making my stomach churn. "Your wife has decided to file for divorce," he said. "These documents outline her terms. She's hoping for an amicable resolution, but if you choose to contest, I'm going to stop you right there." I interrupted, stepping up onto the porch. "You think I don't know what's going on? You think I don't know you've been working with Travis to steal from me? I've seen the emails. I have all the evidence." For the first time, his smug demeanor cracked. His smile faltered, and his eyes darted to the side like he was searching for an escape route. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said quickly. "Sure you don't," I said, pulling the flash drive out of my pocket and holding it up. "But I've got enough proof to bury you, Travis, and Emily in court. So take your amicable resolution and shove it." His face darkened, and he took a step back. "If you threaten me, Mr. Walker, I'll be forced to report you to the authorities." "Threaten you?" I said with a bitter laugh. "You don't need a threat. What you need is a lawyer. Because when I'm done with you, you won't just lose this case. You'll lose your license." The color drained from his face. "You're making a mistake," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "No, you and Emily made the mistake," I said, stepping closer. "Now get off my property before I call the cops." For a moment, he stood there, looking like he wanted to argue. But he must have realized he was out of his depth because he turned and walked back to his car without another word. I watched him drive off, the papers still clutched in my hand. My heart was pounding, but I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. He might have thought he could intimidate me, but now he knew better. As I walked inside, I tossed the papers onto the kitchen counter without looking at them. Emily was nowhere to be seen, And for once, I was grateful for the silence. Later that night, I sat down at the kitchen table and opened the divorce papers. As expected, Emily was asking for a lot. Half of everything, custody of the kids, and a hefty monthly payment in spousal support. But she had no idea I was about to fight back with everything I had. Just as I finished reading through the papers, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Karen. "Chris, we found something else in Travis's files. It's not just about Emily. You need to see this." Karen's message felt like a gut punch. It's not just about Emily. What could that possibly mean? Was this nightmare deeper than I imagined? I didn't waste time speculating. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to the gym. My mind was spinning as I pulled into the parking lot, my headlights catching Karen standing by the front door, her arms crossed. "Karen," I said, stepping out of the car, "what did you find?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she handed me a thick folder. "You're going to want to sit down for this," she said, her voice heavy. Inside the office, I opened the folder, my hands trembling slightly. The first thing I saw was another spreadsheet, similar to the one I'd already seen, but this one had even more details. It listed clients Travis had been involved with, and not just romantically. "These are financial records," Karen said, sitting across from me. "Bank accounts, loan documents, even investments. Travis wasn't just seducing these women. He was stealing from them." My stomach turned as I scanned the names. There were over a dozen women listed, each one with a note detailing how much money he'd taken. Some were smaller amounts, hundreds here and there, but others were in the tens of thousands. And then I saw it, Emily's name. My blood ran cold as I read the note next to her name. $15,000, joint savings account. Plan to settle remaining debt through Chris Walker's assets. I slammed the folder shut and looked up at Karen. He was planning to take even more? Karen nodded grimly. "It gets worse. Travis was also using some of these women as pawns in investment scams. He convinced them to put money into fake businesses or opportunities that didn't exist. And your wife? She was involved in one of those scams too." She slid another document across the desk, a fake contract with Emily's signature at the bottom. "Travis convinced her to invest $10,000 into a non-existent fitness studio," Karen explained. "The money disappeared, of course. He probably spent it on himself." I stared at the paper, a sick feeling rising in my chest. Emily wasn't just a victim. She was a participant. Whether or not she knew the full extent of Travis's schemes, she'd been complicit in the financial disaster they were creating. "I need copies of all of this," I said, my voice firm. Karen nodded. "Already done. But Chris, you should know, some of these women are willing to testify against Travis. If you take this to court, you won't be alone." I swallowed hard, the weight of it all settling on my shoulders. This wasn't just about my marriage anymore. It was about exposing Travis for the predator he was and holding Emily accountable for the damage she'd done. As I drove home with the folder in the passenger seat, a new sense of determination settled over me. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. Not Travis, not Emily, not anyone who thought they could manipulate me and destroy my life. When I got home, Emily was waiting for me. She sat at the kitchen table, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "Where were you?" she asked softly. "Getting the truth," I said, dropping the folder onto the table in front of her. "Go ahead. Take a look. It's all there, everything you and Travis have been up to." Her hands trembled as she opened the folder. Her face paled as she scanned the documents, and by the time she looked up at me, tears were streaming down her cheeks. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear, Chris, I didn't know he was doing all of this." "Save it," I snapped. "You knew enough. You knew he was using you, and you went along with it anyway. You drained our savings. You lied to me, and now you're going to pay for it." Her tears turned to sobs, but I didn't feel a shred of pity that I guess Emily sat there crying. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from my lawyer. "Chris," he said when I answered, "I just got word from the court. Emily filed a motion to freeze your accounts this morning. She's still trying to play you." My lawyer's words hit like a sucker punch. Emily filed a motion to freeze my accounts. After everything, her lies, the stolen money, the betrayal, she still thought she could outplay me? "Chris, you still there?" my lawyer asked. "Yeah," I said, my jaw tightening. "What are my options?" Well, he said, his tone steady but urgent. With the evidence you've collected, we can file a counter motion to freeze the account she's been using, including any tied to Travis. But we need to move fast. If the court sides with her first, she could lock you out of everything. I clenched my fists, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. Do it, I said. File the counter motion. Use every piece of evidence we've got. I'll get started right away, he replied. And Chris, stay calm. You're in a strong position here. As the call ended, I looked across the table at Emily, who was still sitting there, clutching the folder Karen had given me. She must have seen the look on my face because her tears stopped, replaced by a flicker of panic. What's going on? She asked, her voice trembling. I leaned forward, my voice low and icy. You filed a motion to freeze my accounts. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Her eyes widened, and she shook her head. Chris, I didn't. Travis told me it was just to protect me in case. Stop lying. I slammed my fist on the table, making her jump. You're still working with him, aren't you? After everything I've uncovered, you're still trying to screw me over. I'm not, she cried, her voice breaking. I didn't know what I was signing. He said it was just a precaution. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. You didn't know? That's your excuse? You've been not knowing a lot lately, Emily. Well, guess what? You're out of chances. I grabbed my keys and left the house, leaving her sobbing at the table. I couldn't stand to be near her anymore. As I drove, my phone buzzed with another call, this time from Karen. Chris, it's me again, she said. I just got off the phone with one of the women Travis conned. She's willing to press charges, and she's got a lawyer. She also said there's more. He's been using a fake business to launder the money he's been stealing. My grip on the wheel tightened. A fake business? I repeated. Yes, Karen confirmed. It's under his name and a few others, including, she hesitated. Including who? I demanded. Karen sighed. Emily. Her name's on the paperwork as a co-signer. I nearly had to pull over. Emily wasn't just a victim in Travis's schemes. She was an accomplice. Whether she realized it or not, her name being tied to his fake business meant she could be held just as accountable. Thanks, Karen, I said, my voice strained. Keep me updated. I hung up and made another call. To my lawyer. Chris, he said, picking up immediately. What's going on? I've got more dirt on Travis and Emily, I said. A fake business they're both tied to. Can we use this? Absolutely, he replied. If we can prove she was involved, even unintentionally, it strengthens your case. The court will see her as a liability, not a victim. I spent the rest of the night gathering everything I had, texts, emails, bank records, and now the new documents about the fake business. By morning, I was ready. When Emily finally emerged from the guest room, her face pale and puffy from crying, I handed her a copy of the new evidence. What's this? She asked, her voice weak. It's over, Emily, I said coldly. Travis isn't just a con artist, he's a criminal. And you? You're tied to his schemes. You think the court's going to side with you when they see all of this? Her hands trembled as she flipped through the papers. I didn't know, she whispered, tears spilling again. Chris, I didn't. You didn't care, I interrupted. You didn't care what you were doing to me, to us. Well, now you get to deal with the consequences. As she stood there crying, my phone buzzed with one final text from Karen. Chris, Travis was arrested this morning. The cops are going through his records now. They'll probably want to talk to Emily too.